All I want for Christmas is no more disability poverty. Hello, my name is Brent Frain. I'm the host of PWD Allies podcast. Well, today is International Day for Persons with Disabilities, but all I want for Christmas is no more disability poverty in Canada. I'm not asking for too much, am I? Stay tuned as the show starts now. Hello, everyone, and the show starts now. As I mentioned, today is International Day for Persons with Disabilities, and the theme of the show today is All I Want for Christmas. All I want for Christmas is no disability poverty in Canada. Nobody should be in legislated poverty in Canada, period, end of story. We need to modernize our systems, go into the regulations, and actually do a complete refit. The policies basically reflect the regulations. And I always talk about way back in different podcasts about the old spaghetti episode. What goes into the ingredients in order to make the regulations? Well, we've told the governments from all levels of what goes in. Now it's up to them to actually do. Talk is cheap, right? Actions are results. So today I have Tom Pogson joining me on the podcast, and I have Jeff Leggat joining me from Disability Action of Canada. Tom is the basic income guy, and Jeff is the Disability Action of Canada advocate, a very strong advocate. I also have Neil Matheson, my editor-producer, on the show with me, as always. Lovely to have each and every one of you on today, and we're going to dive into disability poverty and why it exists in Canada, because all I want for Christmas is an end to it.
Why does it exist?
Exactly.
Hello, everyone. How are y'all doing?
Good. How you doing, Brent?
Good, Jeff. Good, Jeff.
Good. Good. Thank you.
Yeah.
It was nice to see all of our lovely, well-meaning politicians send out a gorgeous little greeting to say Happy International Disability Day to all the persons with disability around the world, and how our country would be so much better if we could just get everybody employed. All our disabled people employed. Let's get them all employed.
I mean, I'll give them credit. Normally, they don't say the word disability. You have to pull it out of their mouth.
Well, before we launched today's show, I was talking about the fact that normally I'm aware of what today is. That today is the International Day of Disability on December 3rd. But the reason I forgot, and the reason I forgot is because nobody's talking about it. Nobody cares. Nobody talks about it. And let's maybe share that video now, Brent, of
one of our best supporters for people with disability, Doug Ford, the Premier of Ontario, who happily supports people with disabilities at $1,000 a month? Oh no, $1,200, wasn't it? $1,216 a month is what he decides people with disabilities in Ontario deserve, who are unable to financially support themselves. You want to bring that up there, Brent?
Bring up the video,
Video here for everyone to watch. And so this is Doug Ford. He's the Premier of Ontario, and his comment on the International Day for Persons with Disabilities, his statement. So here we go. Oh God. Okay, so let's play it here.
Disabilities.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. Today is the International Day of Persons with Disabilities, a chance to reflect on how we can make our province and our communities more accessible and inclusive. There are nearly 2.6 million people in Ontario living with a disability, which is why it is so important that we continue to break down barriers and create better opportunities for everyone. I hope that we all take this chance to reflect on how we can contribute to a more inclusive society where everyone in our province can thrive regardless of any disability. Wishing you all the very best, and God bless.
We don't want to actually give you any financial support, but as long as we can reflect on it, that would be
yeah.
Well, Jeff, it's legislated poverty, but it's indexed to inflation. It's indexed to inflation, though, Jeff.
Nice.
Except in BC.
Except in BC. But in Toronto, they've indexed it to inflation, or Ontario.
Yeah, it's way below, but at least it's indexed down below to inflation.
There you go.
Yeah. Little baby steps, baby steps.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, throw some breadcrumbs here and there, but hey, they don't have to be 100% in poverty. There be 99% in poverty, and then it just kind of.
I don't want a lot for Christmas. I don't even wish for snow.
Justin Trudeau, when all persons with disabilities can fully participate in our economy, our society and our communities will be so much stronger. We're not there yet, but thanks to the relentless work of advocates who we ignore, Canada is becoming a better and more inclusive place. I put the who we ignore in, so just, FYI, that's my own little words, because you can ask Michael Brent about that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, especially on social media right now, even the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, had put his PBO, his office had put a statement out, but no comment from Justin Trudeau directly about persons with disabilities or any of the leaders really to that fact. Even David Eby in British Columbia hasn't put an actual statement out either, which is quite surprising.
Well, you also shared a tweet with me from Neoliberalism from BCANDS or BCANDS.
Yes.
Can you bring that up and share it on your phone?
Sure.
Because I thought that was really good. I mean, he's always bang on. He is always bang on. Like, that's why I was so happy to get him on when we got him on with Michael Prince, because he just speaks the truth all the time, and he's just so bang on all the time.
Yeah, and here's the actual quote that from the BCANDS has said. Let's see if I can get this straightened out here. We are.
Are you able to read it off for us, Brent?
Just read it off, maybe.
Oh, sure. Okay. Yeah. Today is the International Day for Persons with Disabilities, and IDPD was established to promote an understanding of disability issues and mobilize support for the dignity, rights, and the well-being of persons with disabilities. So, he put after 20 plus years since being proclaimed, how do you think that's going? How do I think that's going? Fail.
How do we think that's going, Brent? Yeah,
I think that's a complete fail on every government. They failed. They disabled Canadians, especially with the Canada Disability Benefit. After almost 5 years now, and they still can't get it right. But you know what? We're gonna maybe try to include persons with disabilities and seniors with a $250 payout sometime next year.
But again, that's why I love Neoliberalism. He's always so bang on with his commentary. He's always just speaking the truth, and maybe it has something to do with the fact that his name is Neil too. Maybe but I just love him because he just speaks the truth all the time.
You can't handle the truth.
Yeah.
Let me throw something out here. For all of you who have yet to join Blue Sky Social, Liberal Party is at liberalparty.blueskysocial. I sent a post directed to them about the Canada Disability Benefit, and I said if the Canada Disability Benefit was endorsed unanimously by all 338 members of Parliament across Canada, then why is it such a lame duck bill? Why is it so useless in addressing and ending government-imposed poverty of disabled Canadians? The Liberal, they actually responded to this one within about 3 minutes. And their answer was, I don't know who runs this on behalf of the Liberal Party, but their answer was, to your point, the $250 rebate checks aren't being given to people with disabilities who aren't working, money that would be slightly less urgent if the disability benefit were in place, period. These are fair points and good questions. Let's see what the Prime Minister has to say in the coming days.
My. Wow.
Yeah.
You know, they can hand out all these extra bonuses on their pensions, but they can help out persons with disabilities or seniors who have paid into our society for decades and decades. Our war veterans. Right. I mean, they serve to what we have now, and it's complete disrespect. It's a gut punch, really.
Yeah, I mean, as much as I complain about my clawback of my pension, the BC government here claws back the pensions every month for the last 30 years plus. They've been clawing back the pensions of war veterans that have literally put their lives on the line for people like David Eby and for people like Doug Ford and all of our MLAs and on, put their lives on the line to make sure that Canada exists as a country. And they say, you know, so what? You don't deserve your pension. And that is like more egregious than clawing back my widower pension.
Well, that's what bothers me so much, is that there's a lot of seniors that fought for what we have now, and they're disabled in many ways, and physically, mentally, I mean, you name it, all the above. And they don't qualify for.
Well, they're not working now, but they built Canada to what it is today.
Exactly.
And so what, they deserve a double middle finger because they're not working now?
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. And it's messed up. And that's, I mean, it's a divisive. It's a dividing society against society. It's like pinning against disabled, saying, well, you get market rent or you get subsidized housing. At the end of the day, people pay the rent. They need their basic necessities met. And when you can't take care of society, then we got a problem. But they can take care of themselves. I mean, we'll dive into about BC, about the MLAs here. 47. I mean, the CKNW in Vancouver, in British Columbia, had David Eby, the talk show host, Mike Smith, had David Eby, the Premier of British Columbia, on his show at 9:05. So if you want to go look in the time vault, everyone, on today's show, you'll find the conversation. It was about a half hour of discussion with David Eby that he had. And he mentioned about all the MLAs, 47 of them, and they got anywhere from $42,000 up to $60,000 on top of their base salary. Their parliamentary secretaries got $18,000. Now, just think of that $18,000 figure. That's more than what PWD get in a whole year.
Yeah.
So $119,000.
I get less than that because I get my income clawed back. So I get less than that.
But they get $119,000 base salary, and they get $18,000. But hey, it's gift wrapped. There you go. No questions. Meanwhile, the cost of living has been soaring in British Columbia. People said, "Well, hey, we need help now." The Premier knew that people needed help during the platform, during the campaign, and well, we know what happened with the election, right? I mean, it was a razor-thin election. He almost lost. Because
he only won by one seat.
Yeah, 22 votes. 22 votes.
Yeah, and I mean, like, just consider this. Like, just pause and consider this for a moment. He won by one seat. Now, I mean, I know I'm hard on. I'm hard on David Eby a lot. I'm very outspoken when it comes to David Eby. But there's a reason why, and I've told you this, Brent. There's a reason because, he's a lawyer. In let's say in his past life, he's a lawyer, right? And you don't get to be a lawyer by being stupid. You don't get to be a lawyer by being stupid. So we know he's a smart man. We know he's a smart man. And the other thing is, you don't get to be a lawyer by not being confident. You have to be a confident person to be a lawyer. Okay?
Yeah.
So number one, you have to be smart and you have to be confident. So why is David Eby, the premier, like so not smart and so not confident? Like he's doing two things. Like he's not smart and he's not confident, because he's giving everybody handouts like these raises, which is totally not smart because it's a bad look. And then he's obviously not confident because he knows he has to buy votes. He has to buy the allegiance of his own caucus because he knows that his own caucus is going to walk the floor. So he knows he doesn't have confidence. And this is from a lawyer. Again, a lawyer is supposed to be smart and is supposed to like, you're supposed to.
He's made so many missteps.
I know.
Since he's taken that office. He's made missteps when it comes to the opioid drug crisis. He's made
huge mistake there.
When it
Huge.
comes to the persons with disabilities. He's made missteps when it comes to housing in this province. He's
Which is amazing with
so
his
many
background.
missteps. The people that pay the prices are the homeless, the disabled, the poor, and the people fighting addictions and mental health. And all of us in this province who are at the bottom of the ladder are the ones paying for his mistakes, where he could have made smart and choices. Now, one thing I got to say about this new legislature in BC is we have half the House is Conservatives, half the House is NDP, and two little Greens in the middle. It's time for us to drop the political divide and work together to make solutions that are fit and work for everyone. It's time for every of these MPs from both sides to drop the rhetoric, drop the fear, drop the everything else, and come together and make solutions that are supported by both Conservatives and NDP for the benefit of British Columbia.
Absolutely, Jeff. I couldn't have said it any better than that. Working together.
Simplest thing. And that's how government is supposed to work.
Yeah,
that's how government was envisioned to work from its inception. You represent the people in your area, you compromise, you sit down, you work together, you come up with the best solution that helps everybody. You don't come in and just bulldoze your weird ideas about people that should be able to do crack wherever they want. And we're not going to house them or help them out or whatever, but let's make sure that they're not stigmatized by being drug addicts when we're not helping them at all. Let's pretend that disabled people aren't living in poverty and build 180,000 new subsidized housing units and make sure that they're all housed properly. So the $500 shelter portion isn't only a portion of their rental market monthly expenses. I mean, it's like we're not even trying in government anymore.
And David Eby, when was it? It was 2 years ago. He announced this BC Builds program 2 years ago to build affordable housing. Well, he's lost the thread on affordable housing because the affordable housing that he built is not geared to 30% of your income.
Yeah, it's not affordable.
Like none of it was geared to 30% of your income. So how is that defined as affordable housing? It's not.
Well, the other problem on that topic is when they say 30%. I mean, there's some corporate landlords out there right now that are saying they won't rent to people with disabilities if you're not making $50,000 to $60,000. I mean, wow, that's crazy. I mean, that's another podcast on itself. But I mean, again. I mean, that's affordable to who though?
Who do you know on PWD that's making $60,000, Brent?
Yeah, exactly.
One thing I wanted to springboard off of what Jeff said is, you know, when you talked about politicians working together across party lines, Jeff, is the one example that that just sticks into my head like glue, is that time when we had Dan Davies and Sonia Furstenau. They were in the legislature together. I don't know if you remember this, Jeff, but they were in the legislature together, and they were debating. Bill 7, which is the changes that the minister put forward, right? Sheila Malcolmson, and she was all happy with all these rearranging of the deck chairs that she did, right? And basically you had. And so I was watching on video because it was on video. So I was watching the video, and you had Dan Davies and you had Sonia Furstenau, and they were both just lobbing these softballs at the minister, and it was a thing of beauty, because here you have two politicians that are on completely different parties, but they're completely unified on, like, this is just BS, right?
Yeah.
So
I gotta take a moment to say, on that level, now that the campaign is over, I am so looking forward to working with Tara Armstrong.
Oh yeah.
From the Conservative Party, the MLA Shadow Minister for Social Development and Poverty Reduction.
Okay.
I'm so looking forward to getting back in touch and working with Sheila Malcolmson, who is resuming her position. I don't want to detract from the work that she has done, because she's always kept an open door to us. And even though that she's been doing lots of stuff in the background and in the regulations, and the money hasn't been forthcoming, I will say thank you to her for keeping us at the table. But it's time for Tara, Sheila, Rob, and is it Jamie? The other BC Greens? It's the two BC Greens, Rob, and I think it's Jamie. It's time for all of us to sit down and say it's time to do some positive action, and that includes opening up the collective wealth of BC, and make sure that people we bring an end to the poverty of the disabled in BC. Nice hat, by the way, Brent.
I don't know if I could take you seriously, Brent, with wearing your hat like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's time for us to get together and say, collectively, let's all sit down. Tara and the two BC Greens, which holds a great deal of power at this moment. Thank you. The two people of the party that makes the most sense in our province, which lost the most amount of votes because of fear mongering from the rhetoric. Let's all sit down and bring an end to poverty. And if we're bringing an end to poverty with people with disabilities, it's a good start. Let's bring it to other people as well. Veterans, seniors. Let's shift this whole idea of the only thing good in this province, or the only thing good in society, is working people. The only thing good in society is we look out for our most vulnerable and bring them up. Bring them up, support them, and let them participate in life. Because you and I know your worth is not based on what you can contribute to the GDP. Your worth is based on what you bring to this world, what you bring to society, how you treat others, how you contribute to your community. So,
a few years ago, the basic income movement lost a big name in our movement, which was Götz Werner, who's a German billionaire businessman who ran supermarkets over in Germany. And he had something which is called the toothpaste argument, which is essentially that, as he said, it's like people think that you go into a grocery store and that you're going to pay for that toothpaste. That's actually an error. That toothpaste is already bought and paid for. What you're doing is paying for us to make or get more toothpaste. Money is always forward looking, not backwards looking.
Right.
And so it is, as he said, it's money that inserts you into society, not jobs.
Yes.
It's money that gives you the ability to then get the jobs or whatever. You want disabled people to be working more. Having them have a floor of money makes a lot more sense than valuing jobs over people. I mean, it was so frustrating. I was listening to the Politics and Podcast. What was it called? The Power and Politics podcast, and the NDP literally said, federal NDP, we are the party of working Canadians. I'm like, oh, for heaven's sake.
Well,
like,
well, that's the thing. You give people the resources, and they're going to put the money back into help small businesses thrive. Because when small businesses shut down, now actually those employees at the small business, they lose their job.
Yes.
Yeah. So the whole ripple effect. One thing I wanted to get Tom, your view, and also Jeff, your view on it is about the BC housing. Now, right now, BC Housing's policy in the regulations, it's actually in the regulations. I found this out by making a phone call and having a long conversation and an argument, really, is what it came down to. Where I said, well, I mean, a lot of PWD, the majority of PWD live in market housing. They pay market housing rent, maybe 10%, maybe, I said, at the very most, maybe 15% live in subsidized housing. He goes, well, I don't know where you get the stats from that. I go, well, I mean, I'm just telling you the truth here, right? I mean, I said, sometimes the truth hurts, but I said, that's fine. I said, and he goes, and the point is, I go, well, the point is PWD can't afford the market rent, right? I said, the rates are not high enough, so they want to have a cheaper rent. I mean, who doesn't want to have cheaper rent? But because people on disability, I mean, they automatically would qualify if they meet certain criteria. He goes, correct. Yeah. I go, so if, say, I said to him, for instance, if I know a person waiting at a bus stop and they say, I just want cheaper housing, and they're a PWD, they're a single person, and maybe they know a friend who's a PWD, or they have a roommate who's a PWD, can they actually go into subsidized housing? And he goes, no. I go, what do you mean, no? He goes, no. So if you have a friend or a roommate, you cannot go into subsidized housing. I mean, you can, but you have to be in a relationship in order to qualify under BC Housing's regulations. I said, that's messed up. I said, so that person now can't afford market housing, so they need to be homeless first. Yeah. Right. So they need to kind of go through the channels first to see if they qualify. I said, well, my motto is to see people housed, not unhoused. So to actually help people keep their housing, I said, can we not extend it over to market housing? Well, that's a provincial government initiative, as if they want to do that. But again, even if they did that, he says those criteria would still be in place. So what I want to see, I want to see that changed. Obviously, I want to see it based on the individual, not the household. But anyway, I wanted your observation on that, Tom. Like, in other words, BC Housing, in a nutshell, is saying you need to be in a relationship and two PWD under one file under BC Housing. Because otherwise, if you have a bunch of, say, people moving in with you, what, are they all going to be in a relationship? You got like 10 people all together. Yeah.
There's all these rules trying to sort out everything that's gone wrong, and it's like I always come back to the fact that the average unhoused person is someone my age. I'm a Gen Xer, and it's not, it's these kids these days. No, it's like things have been changing dramatically for the last 50 years in the economy through the neoliberal movement that happened in the 1980s and 90s, which led to the Washington Consensus, which led to the Mike Harcourts of the world. And all that change, while at the same time the share to labor has been going down, and the share to rentier capitalism, like where it's the ownership, it's like George Carlin said it, your boss's boss, the guys who own everything, where that's like, and then you have land values, which there's that really great thing that Commonwealth Canada has been sharing a few times. I never really quite got land value tax until I listened to this guy talking about how, let's say you have a house, let's say here in Vancouver, and next to it they put in a SkyTrain station. The value of that land just went, right? So it increases the cost of everything you do in that area, whether it's leases, if you're running a business with hiring people, the cost of everything goes up. And so it's like going after that kind of stuff and bringing the costs back down and bringing the incomes back up. Because it's like it's slowly been going that way while jobs have been precaritizing, while we've been adding automation. It's like Guy Standing was a hero of mine. He calls it the perfect storm, and like he couldn't be more right. It's like it's all these things together, and then you're trying to, okay, so what we're gonna do? Okay, so you can't have, it can be a relationship, but it can't. holy crap, get people's incomes up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Scale up. These people will go into houses. These people will go into apartments. And then because it's like we have way more homelessness now than we had before, which is where I started this rant. It's like, why? Why did that start? Everyone didn't suddenly, cop a bad attitude in 2010. Things have been changing,
Yeah.
and getting harder for ordinary people.
Well, here's
basically it isn't a panacea, but it can help to create that anchor and start bringing everyone up.
Yeah.
Raise people up so they can succeed in society. I mean, because like right now, PWD in market housing, they don't qualify for subsidized housing simply because they have the shelter portion. Now, I remember a previous minister who used to be in charge of the disability program in BC, and one of the arguments that he had was, or maybe not an argument, but I mean, it was, I guess he argued with the government because he wanted to get rid of, one of his plans was to get rid of the word shelter out of the equation completely. He says it was archaic, it needed to go. I don't think the government just didn't want to make that happen, and unfortunately, he fell with the sword, right?
That was Shane Simpson, we should say.
Yes, Shane Simpson. He's really a strong advocate. I know that he did want to see that removed, the shelter portion, because like his view is that, I mean, if you're a person, say there's 8 or 10 people in a unit and they're all sharing rent, like a 2 or a 3 bedroom, I mean, bunk beds or whatever you got to do. He says you got to do what you got to do to make it happen. So if everybody's paying and that's when rents were so cheap, I mean, cheaper than they are now. But if everyone's paying like 25 or 50 bucks each, all that money, he says, goes back into the economy. I mean, and I said, well, what if there's a shelter portion? Well, we get rid of it. So you only pay what you can pay to keep you housed, right? And so I think the government has really lost track of that, because at the end of the day, is like PWD will get their check. I mean, $14.83.50 is the base amount. You get a subsidized bus pass. If you opt into the bus pass, all right, you're not going to get that. If you opt out of the bus pass, you're going to get $15.35. So and that's a nice little chunk if you opt out. But again, you can't rent anywhere for the full check amount for PWD. But that shelter portion is included in the amount. So market rent, you basically pay the majority to your rent. What you got left is your bills. I know there's been some argument from in the disability community on that, on how that should work.
Well, I mean, and Lexi, that's a good jumping off point again, Brent, because let's we don't have to mention names. No. But again, you've been kind of under attack on Twitter from a particular fellow, we should say, who calls himself an advocate, who is a big proponent of food banks, we should say as well, and he always says, well, why does Brent complain about food banks? And he is like, why are you complaining that you're not getting enough? But this is from a guy that he lives in Toronto somewhere, Ottawa, and he is getting an RGI unit, like a rent geared to income unit. So of course, to him, he can afford stuff because he's getting RGI, like he's got rent geared to income, like affordable housing. But we talk about this all the time. Only roughly 12% of people on disability actually qualify for subsidized housing. So the other 88% or 88 to 90% do not get subsidized housing. So of course the financial pressures are way higher. So for him to say, Brent, why are you complaining? I mean, sure, he can say that because he's already got his RGI, so he's good. He's good. He's like saying, "Oh, like why is everybody else complaining? Why is the other 90% that aren't getting RGI? Why are they complaining? It's so stupid, so stupid."
I just listened to a thing recently about someone getting food poisoning from a food bank because of expired food, which is what you get a lot. I've actually gone to food banks myself with exes and things in the past, And as someone who took first aid commercial, most of it is either complete crap or you're supposed to throw it out. Dented tin. It's like people going, well, I can't eat that. I can't eat this. I can't eat it. It's like a torn blanket. But what's hilarious not hilarious, but is that in the 1970s there was a lot of attack on that kind of welfare queen thing, which was attacking people of color who were going on welfare. But the food banks came out when there was a lot of financial pressure on middle class people and white people. That's why they suddenly appeared in the early 80s, and they were supposed to go away because don't worry, trickle down's going to work and you're not going to need them anymore.
Yeah.
There's a picture in England of like the food banks over there where it's like it shows where all the food banks are. It literally covers England.
Oh, wow.
Like, oh, man. So much.
Yeah.
Well, so it's like there's a stopgap that like it's not they're like food banks and dollar stores, they're all indications that it's not, and homelessness, they're all indications the economy is not working. You don't. It's like blaming the water for boiling when you should turn the water heat down. You know?
Yeah.
Well, you see, my part of my argument, on about the rates is this raise.
Yeah.
I mean, get rid of that shelter, just raise the overall rates, because people are still going to pay their bills, their rent, how they're going to pay it. I mean, I know. The other individual's argument is, well, Brent complains that if they raise the shelter portion, it's not going to go to support. It doesn't really matter how you do it. Raise the support, raise the shelter.
Yeah.
Today, you're going to be paying your stuff anyway. Yeah.
Everyone should be so frustrated with the fact that it's. I come back to that quote from David when it comes to like how they over here they go, oh, we got to be fiscally prudent. And then all of a sudden they roll out this thing that doesn't hit disability at all, doesn't hit the people who need it at all.
Yeah.
The only thing that it hits low-income people is I think diapers are going to have no GST. That's about it. Most things like natural Christmas trees. People in apartments don't get natural Christmas trees. Yeah. They don't go to restaurants.
Yeah.
I come back to that line from David Graeber.
Jeff, you're up next.
Where he said he was talking to a politician. He's like, you don't believe all this fiscal responsibility stuff, do you? He's like, no, of course we know it's all bullshit, but we lean on you academics to tell the public that it actually makes sense.
Let me touch on that. I put a quote out on Chrystia Freeland's post on X about the fact that this no GST for 2 months and the $250 rebate checks do not help disabled low-income seniors at all. And I got clapback from people saying, well, come on, disabled people still have to buy food. And I wrote back saying, are you kidding me? The amount of food that a disabled person can afford to buy is so minimal that we rely on food banks, on churches, on community dinners, on handouts, on Christmas hampers, on everything we can get our hands on, because we don't have the money left over to go shopping and buy any kind of food that has any kind of worth. Oh, great. Maybe over the next 2 months, we'll save $30 on our grocery items because that's all we can afford to buy.
Yeah, or even buy clothing, right? I mean, even
that. The GST things aren't even on foods that you'd necessarily buy unless you're going to buy nothing but chips.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, again, Jeff, you kind of hit the nail on the head again. It's because, when you think of provincial assistance from BC or anywhere across Canada and other provinces, it's all geared as charity. It's like we the government are giving you charity. We the government are giving you charity because that's all you deserve. And like when I knew that you were coming on the podcast, Tom, I was because you are the basic income guy, right? So basic income and UBI. So I was thinking about a new song for like a Christmas song for UBI. All I want for Christmas is UBI. UBI. All I want for Christmas is UBI. Right?
That's a good one.
I mean, I was putting out the thing today about how it was one person that posted a thing on Instagram I thought was really good, where she explained exactly the same thing that Thomas Paine explained, where it's like we don't mind it when we're doing something where we all gather together to help a person, but we don't like it when the system is built that way, as opposed to charity, when it's a right. Like that's where we need to move to, especially like
we have to
shift. It should have been moving there 100 years ago when Bertrand Russell first came to it. We can definitely do it now. And
that's
the
the
more
thing.
you make
We have-
something a right, the more powerful it is.
We have to shift our collective to make sure that no one is left in poverty. We have the financial resources to do it in Canada. We have the ability to do that. And we just don't have the top-down direction yet.
Yeah,
and
people will.
clinging to this belief that if you're disabled, if you're on the streets, if you're poor, if you're unemployed, if you are anything less than a hardworking 40-hour a week person, then you're not. Then you don't deserve anything in this country. And that's the feedback I also got on that thing from Chrystia Freeland. Another person said, disabled people already get money, and if you're a low-income senior, you've had your whole life to be able to save up your money. Screw you.
Wow. Yeah.
And all this other kind of stuff, and it's like, okay, first of all, that whole ideology, it's time to be like buried and gone. It's time for us to lift up our most vulnerable, to address their issues, and to make it simple. And this is the thing that we all kind of get lost on. We fight over shelter portion versus whatever else. We fight on all these little details that they've come up. I don't give a crap how you classify it. Give people $2,100 a month or 24, 27, whatever your official poverty level is determined to be at, whether it's MBM or LECO. You have this whole idea of poverty level, this whole calculation of what poverty level means in Canada. Use it. Use it. Sure, no one is below that. And it's the collective wealth of a nation. It's not your taxes or my taxes or someone else's taxes. It's the collective wealth of the nation that supports its most vulnerable and helps everybody. So if you give, if each one of us were given $2,400 a month, as also, I can guarantee it's not going offshore. It's not going into a bank to sit in Scotiabank vault. It's not going to help the stock market. It's not going to do anything besides help my community, help your community, help your local landlord. You know what I mean?
I mean,
so that's the thing. If we got to bring it down to basics.
Well, let's. Sorry, Brent. I just wanted to interject a little bit. Let's state another obvious thing, is that people with disabilities are a protected class. We are a protected class, right?
Yes.
I mean that is the truth. That is a fact. People with disabilities are a protected class, and yet our governments, provincially and federal, are saying almost like, so what? So what? You're a protected class, but so what? Like, really? Is that what we want our governments to do and to say? You're a protected class, but so what? What?
And if you look at the numbers, 1.5 million disabled Canadians living in poverty. It's probably higher now, but we're in a country of 40 million. If we can't afford to support 1.5 million out of 40 million and out of all of our resources, then we're doing something wrong.
Oh, definitely is something completely off the scale there. And I mean, I just give them a report card of F on that, like fail, right? Because I mean, right now, like the living wage in Vancouver, the city of Vancouver in British Columbia, for people listening to this, it came out to a recent report of $30.05 an hour. They're saying that anybody making less than $30.05 an hour is living way below a poverty level. I mean, really? So you divide, that's based on 40 hours a week. So if you divide that down in for a PWD, it comes to just over $9 an hour. $9 an hour. So it shows you between $9 and over 30. Like, we got a huge problem here. I remember not that many years ago where the buying power for $1, I mean, you could get more value for $1, and it has eroded away so drastically because government, whichever government's in power, they'll blame the other government for whatever problems happen. But go a year, skip a year, go a year. I mean, this year we've had record inflation, but we got no increase in our disability rates in our BC budget in British Columbia. $0. And so I brought this to my landlord, my manager at the time. And you know what the response was? That's despicable. That's unacceptable, because you need a place to live, right? If you don't live here, guess what? High market rent, you're going to be having big problems. And I go, yeah. And it shows, so the government needs to basically step up and actually tie your rates to inflation and give you a rate increase every year going forward. Because we give you a rent increase of 3.5% this year. I mean, it came to like $50. So
and
that's got to somewhere.
Based on poverty level, nothing less.
Exactly.
Nothing less. Not a penny more but nothing less.
And when I asked our premier one time on a talk show on a local radio station that question, and you know what the response was? Well, we raised the earnings exemptions. You may want to look at that. Well, earnings exemptions has nothing to do with raising the rates.
You may want to get a job.
Yeah.
Can I just pop back and say, corrections, Rob Botterall is the BC Greens MLA, and Jeremy Valarote. So I apologize for calling you Jeremy. So thank you so much. Looking forward to working with you too, and Tara, and Sheila. And Sonia behind the scenes. Sonia is still the leader of the BC Greens Party. Looking forward to working with any MLA that understands common sense, understands respect and dignity for people who are living with disabilities in this province, who are living in dire poverty. We look forward to working with all of you on both sides of the BC legislature to end legislated poverty in BC. We also look forward to working with anybody in Ottawa, including our amazing who is the shadow minister again? Benita
Zarella.
Yeah.
Anybody else from the NDP, which keeps hammering.
We want to get her on soon again, actually. I'll be reaching out to her soon. So maybe she's listening now. So she can expect to get an email from me soon.
The despicable liberals who like to chat and say how wonderful our International Disability Day is for our disabled people. Let's get them all working. It's time to end legislated poverty of PWD across Canada. And if that costs $10 billion a year, so be it. We have many ways to get you that money. There's many options that you choose not to use, and a lot of it has to do with offshore accounts, and we all know that.
Well,
I know that Benita Zarella just had introduced a bill in the House of Commons, and it got seconded today, or just yesterday, by Lisa Marie Barron, MP for Nanaimo and Nanaimo Ladysmith, if I got that correct. So that's really good. And that bill, actually, people listening wondering, well, what is he talking about? There's a bill that actually, if passed, now we're hoping that the Conservatives decide not to vote it down, or the Liberals decide not to vote it down, because it actually stops the premiers from doing clawbacks of the. So far, the regulations have to be completely revamped, changed, modernized, and they should have been done right from day one for the Canada Disability Benefit. Because right now, as it stands, $200 by July at the earliest of next year, for $200 to each individual. Oh, right now, I think it's based on household, but it's tied to a DTC and all these other hurdles to jump through. But at least it's a start getting this bill done, saying stop the clawbacks. The amount needs to change on that CDB. We all know that. So, I mean, but of course, the BC said they're waiting on the CDB for next year, 2025. So those regulations have to be changed. I mean, because otherwise it's just that waiting game, right? Delay tactics. What I want to see, folks, I want to see nobody living in legislative poverty in Canada. Simple, just like Jeff has mentioned, and Tom Saint has mentioned too, and Neil. Nobody should be having to scrape around trying to figure out, well, should I cut a bill to pay my rent? Should I cut a bill to pay for medications that aren't covered for whatever reason? Buy clothing. Do you have to sacrifice so much to not even get by, or worry that if you live in a precarious housing that you're going to be homeless, that if something goes wrong, one little slip of one little thing and you're right on the edge of homelessness? We need to collectively bring our rates up to a standard. And when I say a standard, I mean, there needs to be a bare standard. And then when you have a disability, your expenses are even higher than that. And it's a disgrace that Canada has allowed our citizens to be in such abject poverty. No citizen should live in poverty in Canada. I mean, like I mentioned earlier in the podcast, our veterans, seniors. I mean, once you get past 64 years of age, you're a senior. You still have a disability. Doesn't go away. You just get more disabilities. I mean, either you're diagnosed with more, I mean, or you're going to acquire from birth and going forward. You can get into a car accident going forward. I mean, knock on wood, that hopefully nothing ever happens to anybody. But the policy makers who make these decisions, I want you to really, really listen carefully to what we're saying. We're saying no more poverty, PWD, no more.
Well, and one thing I wanted to springboard off of what you said, Brent, is like the radio interview that was done by Mike Smith this morning. I listened to it. With David Eby, our premier.
Powerful. It was
really powerful, and one of the conversations they got into was this issue of increased violence, like all this increased violence now on city streets of people getting clocked in the head. And I was just watching the news the other day of just a simple little just one example, just only one example, but very powerful example of this guy that has a barber shop in Chinatown, and he a couple of days ago was going to be his last day cutting hair down in Chinatown because it was getting so bad that he has to leave, because he says none of my customers want to come down here anymore, because he says like they're all getting their cars broken into, and they're all getting like assaulted. They're all getting physically assaulted to come down and get a haircut. Like why would customers want to come down to Chinatown and get assaulted or get their cars broken into? And you have to think, like you just said that the provincial government is waiting on the federal government. Why is the provincial government waiting when they can see with their own eyes? They can see with their own eyes all this problem with increased violence and increased poverty is creating so much problems economically. It's causing so many problems, and they don't even want they don't want to see it. They're like, don't show us that. Don't talk about that.
And the problem with that, though, is, like I said, they gave themselves all those increases. I mean, each one $60,000. I mean, a perk, just so they don't, stay in line, right? But PWD, I mean, in 2023 was the last increase we had was $125. I mean, cost of living skyrocketed everywhere, and people were suffering. We had an election.
Only for some.
That's true.
That's right. I should correct that. $125 only went to people in market housing. It didn't go to people in subsidized housing. Their costs have gone up, and crazily they've gone up. And to me, it's like a slap in the face, a gut punch that people in subsidized housing did not get that increase. It should have went to everybody, because to me, it's that divide. Oh, you can have, but you can't have. We got to stop that narrative. We really have to, because that divisive is really hurting society in general. I mean, people working at minimum wage right now. I have one of my neighbors who works at 3 part-time jobs, and now barely just has enough to basically pay her rent, pay her bills. She has to go to the food bank because she doesn't have enough to buy all the food. She has to hope that it's fresh, because she got a head of lettuce that was all rotten inside. She got a cucumber that was all slimy. She had to throw it out. A loaf of bread, it was all moldy. I mean, so she went to the store to go and get a jug of milk. Well, guess what? Her fridge went on the fritz. So guess what? It went all sour. So she threw it out. She lost her receipt. The store wouldn't give her another jug of milk. She went there. Another good, like a person at the grocery store felt bad and said, you know what? here, I'll get you the jug of milk.
Yeah.
And thank you on that person.
Yeah,
Like that's
yeah.
really nice, right? Again, the government needs to make sure that these incomes, they need to be up to a standard.
Yeah, like one thing that needs to be destroyed once and for all is the idea that poverty somehow incentivizes work.
Yeah.
It needs to go. It needs to die. Like this goes back to 1834 with the vagrancy laws that like people were literally, I mean, there's bloodshed. There was blood that was shed over this.
Yeah.
And like Orson Welles said it, it's like, did my poverty help my creativity? No. You know, like, like I work downtown here, and the place that I clean now, because of all the insecurity around it, has an iron fence that goes all the way around it, new alarm codes, new sensors, all this kind of stuff that didn't used to exist.
Oh my!
This is what you get when you just allow things to play out. It doesn't cause people to, I better work then. That's not a thing. It just grinds. It just it does all the opposite of what a basic income does. All the food insecurity goes up, and that's the thing that basic income specifically addresses. I know that's my own tangent, but it's like it's insecurity that's so powerful right now.
Yes.
Where people don't know what the heck is coming next.
Well,
how poverty charges interest.
Yeah, the fear on it though, Tom, is
foundation and that stability. That
if they lose their job, if she loses her job or gets her hours cut down so much, she won't be able to have her place. So like she has her vehicle right now, like she has very basic insurance right now. But if she loses one of her jobs, she has to lose her vehicle or keep a roof over her head. And if she loses her other job, now she's completely hooped. She says, "I'll have to go and buy a good tent."
And Tom,
everyone feeling like that, social, like Guy said it perfectly. It's like the idea of social solidarity becomes a bad joke. This is where people start listening to certain kinds of politicians and things who are trying to play on fears because their fears are real and they're there. And you get to this individualistic mindset of like, he's got it, therefore I don't have it. Ugh. It's like, we need to move away from that.
Exactly.
And Tom, to add on top of your statement, we have to move away from the thought process and the idea that poverty is self-inflicted, self-deserved, and won't happen to me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, we have to move away from the whole idea that poverty and people in poverty are less than.
Yeah.
And we have to do that as a society. And I would rather spend my days helping other people, bring them up, than judging them and not wanting them in my backyard because they're less than. We have to
That's a good closing comment there, Jeff, because we actually are at the end of the show. So I didn't know if you wanted to wrap up with closing comments, Brent.
Yeah, sure. And I can relate to a lot of issues when it comes to housing. We have neighbors that live above us, new tenants, and recently, I mean, I've talked about this on the podcast before, and sometimes when I've done different shows, I hear a thud right above me, right? And it's like I try not to get distracted, but it reminds me like, oh, they're home, and I live in an older building. I mean, Tom knows it, and Jeff knows, and our manager came by, and something happened upstairs, and we didn't know, and of course I get the broom and bang, bang, bang on the ceiling. Well, they complained, said, well, hey, like, well, I mean, what do you expect, right? Somebody's gonna start thudding like and shaking the whole place, and screaming. But I fear that I don't want to rock the boat. I said to the management, like, I don't want to complain. I mean, because housing is so hard to come by when it comes to affordability, right? And you rock the boat. Where can you afford to rent again? So a solution had been brought forward to myself and Sonia was that we can offer you another unit, maybe in the same building or one of our other properties, but not for the same rent. Could be higher, but it could be negotiable. So who knows? Maybe it can be for the same rent. I mean, cross my fingers. But why should we have to move? You know what I mean? Like, the problem is that you keep the problem issue, but then you keep rotating the other one, so that it's always rotating unit as a flip, but I don't know. I mean, that's just conspiracy, right? But I look at it as a housing issue. It's so precarious, right? You have to one little problem, and you can, if you make one bad mistake, you could now have an issue where you're homeless, right? I mean, I had basically been interviewed recently through the Daily Hive. There was a news article. The reporter reached out to me, and basically I told my story. And again, I mean, I think that subsidized housing could be great for people, like rent geared to income, RGI, but the conditions have to be changed, right? If you have a bunch of people, they just want a safe place they can call home. Well, they'd have to change these conditions. As long as they're not partying. I can understand if you're partying in a subsidized housing, yeah, you're going to be grounds for kicking out, right? You're going to get kicked out. But I want to see these regulations change so that if people want to move in there, they have to be under, if they're just friends or roommates or whatever, you have to be on one file? Really? Like, how is it? You're now punishing people to have one income just to have the privilege of living in subsidized housing. I mean, it should be equal to based on the person, and just give them a place to call home, right? And
and again, our RGI is great, but again, it's only available to 10 to 12% of people with disabilities.
Yes,
right.
I always say
that's the truth. So I mean, it's a great idea for everybody, but if it's only available to 90%, or to 10%, what is the other 90% supposed to do, right?
Well, the way I look at it is, I mean, just raise the rates and let the person decide where they want to live. I mean, if they want to live in a certain community that's they got accessibility, all their stores and your shops around you, and that's what's available, and that's perfect. I think they need to look at the individual as part of society rather than what the government dictates of saying, oh, well, you're just a statistics. You don't put money back into society.
We need to move our housing back to a more communist idea than a capitalist idea.
Yes.
I'm going to proudly say that, because there's nothing more beautiful than having the corporate hands off of housing, having housing as co-ops, as
more co-ops,
government provided, as a single owner provided. I don't care. Government, but corporations have to have their hands off. And the fact that there's so much corporate ownership on housing nowadays is disgusting.
Well, and that's the part, Jeff, that it fears us, because it's like, what do you, we're in a situation like, what do you do? Like, you have to kind of right now cooperate with your corporate landlord, because if you don't, your hands are tied. And so I want to see these systems change to modernize, to better serve the people in like co-op housing, subsidized housing. I'm all for it. Like, I'm saying, let's do this. Let's get more built, like massive amount getting built. And I think that if the corporate landlords can't be held accountable, obviously, then we need to get more subsidized housing built. Co-op housing is built for sure, because that's the way going forward.
And get your definitions right too, right? Like if you're gonna have affordable housing, make sure it's actually affordable, right? And if you're gonna have poverty level income, make sure you know what the definition of poverty level actually is. Like, get your definitions straight before you start saying we're going to offer this poverty level or we're going to offer this affordable housing. Make sure you're clear on your definitions.
Well, the other part too on that topic, Neil, I'm glad you mentioned that too, because if it's based on household income in subsidized housing, that ceiling has to be raised up. I know that we've had Cassandra on from in Alberta. She mentioned that ceiling for the housing has to be lifted up, because if it's too low right now, I think it's over just 31 or 32,000. That's way too low, because if you get 2 PWD checks, just for instance, now you're actually above that level. One of you is not going to be able to live in there. I had that happen with my mom and my brother. My brother actually had to move out because her income between the three of us was actually over the amount. And so that was decades ago. So that needs to be changed.
Can I throw in here before I leave? Let's support each other. Mutual aid online. Let's support people who need. Instead of Christmas gifts this year, let's support each other who need something online. The mutual aid thing on Twitter, Blue Sky, on anywhere. There's wonderful people across this country that help others out, Jen and other people in Toronto and anywhere. And if someone is asking for something online, if you're able to do it, make that your Christmas gift this year, folks. I have to run.
Yeah, the gift that keeps on giving.
Let's close out with the song. All I want for Christmas is you, B.I. All we want for Christmas is you, B.I.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.